With the invention of lactose-free milk, you can now have caramel if you are lactose intolerant. The hardest part is determining whether or not to say caramel or caramel, or one of the other ways that you say this fantastic candy. You're going to need a heat-proof pan. I prefer aluminum or stainless steel, and then you want to line it with aluminum foil or parchment paper. I like to do this by molding it to the back of the pan and then just turning the pan right side up and then just sliding that aluminum foil in place. You will then need to grease or oil the aluminum foil so it doesn't stick to the caramel. Now don't use glass because glass today can shatter under extreme heat. Unless you are sure your glass is heat-proof safe, I would just avoid it altogether. This is a small batch of caramel, but feel free to double the recipe. In a 3-quart saucepan, we're going to add 1 cup of sugar, 200 grams, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2.5 grams, and 1 cup of milk. That is 240 milliliters. You want to use the lactose-free milk, and you can use fat-free, 2%, 1%, or whole milk. The whole milk will be the richest, but I have used fat-free milk and it works perfectly fine for this recipe. Some people find that it's helpful to add a couple tablespoons of corn syrup or honey to the recipe, and that will help prevent crystallization, but a lot of people have allergies, so I'm keeping this simple. You will have to wash down the sides if any sugar crystals form on the sides as it's cooking though, and you do that with a pastry brush and cold water. Mix this gently until the sugar is well dissolved, and then we're going to put it onto the heat. You want to put this on medium-high heat and then stir it constantly. It'll begin to turn translucent and then foam up right before it starts to boil. If it ever starts to boil too vigorously and starts to rise rapidly, turn down your heat. Every stovetop is different. And since we're talking about stovetops, if you have an electric stovetop that's glass, you have to be super careful making candies. If any of this hits your stovetop while it's hot, it can permanently pit your glass. I actually recommend you don't make hard candies on a glass stovetop if it's electric because you can ruin your top and you have to replace it. It cannot be repaired. Once it starts boiling vigorously like this, it will start to rise pretty quickly. If you have a thermometer, it is very beneficial, and you will just go up to 240 to 250 depending on what kind of caramel you want. 240 will give you a soft chewy caramel, and 250 will give you a harder caramel. Once you start to see brown bits of caramel rise to the surface, you need to start stirring vigorously to prevent burning of the caramel. If you need to, you can turn the heat down slightly and then just adjust the heat as you go. For this recipe, I'm doing 240 for a soft chewy caramel. That's 115 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to show you a trick what you can do if you don't have a thermometer. You take a little bit of this on your spoon and you drip it into cool water. When you do that, you need to make sure that you don't touch the caramel right away or you will burn yourself. Let it sit for several seconds before you even attempt to remove it from the cool water. And you want the water pretty much ice cold when you drip it in there. You're looking for it to form a soft ball, and then it collapses when you put pressure to it. If you want it to be a chewier caramel, you want it to be a soft ball and it doesn't really collapse when you put some pressure to it. As you can see, it's starting to turn a really nice golden brown, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and check it because I know it's really close. You may want to consider turning off the heat at this point so you don't overcook your caramel. Just work really quickly and you'll get the hang of it. At this point, using my spoon, I'm dropping a little bit of the mixture into ice cold water, and then I'm going to remove this from the heat while I check it. You got to let this cool completely before you try to handle this or you will get burned. I've let it set several seconds, and as you can see, it's a nice softball stage, but it collapses easy when I press on it, and then it stretches really nice. This is the soft, chewy caramel I'm looking for, so now I'm ready for the next step. Carefully pour this into a pan and let it cool completely before you even touch it. Do not scrape down the sides or you risk crystallizing. Crystallizing is when it turns grainy and it doesn't taste well at all. You want to let caramel cool completely before you handle it or try to eat it, or you will get burned. It takes several hours sometimes, depending on the temperature in your house. After it's cooled completely, remove the aluminum foil and then just cut it into bite-sized pieces. If you want to store it, you can wrap it in wax paper. I like to use a pizza cutter to cut it because it's safer, but you can use a sharp knife. One tip is to spray it with non-stick cooking spray and it makes it a lot easier. Look how stretchy and soft this caramel is. It's absolutely delicious. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Here are your ingredients if you want to follow along. Thank you for visiting us at jacksonsjob.com. And as always, happy baking.